The Trials of Mana Remake has incorporated a lot of changes from its classic release, so let's go over some of those changes and hopefully cover some things you didn't know about. Let's start first with some gameplay changes related to combat. Chests are no longer dropped by enemies in the remake. In Classic, after all enemies were defeated in the current section of the map, there was a chance they would drop a chest that contained one item. Sometimes chests were also booby-trapped, but it was impossible to tell, so it was something I always kept in mind if I was thinking about opening a chest when my party was in a rough spot. Booby-trapped chests would open a roulette in which there were a specific number of safe spots depending on your luck, with the rest being a form of a trap that did damage. Sometimes one of those traps was also a mimic. In the remake, each enemy will have a chance of dropping an item that gets automatically picked up. Mimics are still found in the world where chests can be found though. Sometimes enemies will also have shields in the remake, something that wasn't in Classic. This significantly reduces the damage inflicted to them, and was a good addition to the new combat system. Nothing else to really say about that. Moving on, in Classic, using special attacks will always use the strongest possible attack with whatever CS is built up, but if you didn't cause any damage, the gauge will not be depleted. This obviously doesn't happen in the remake, but was something that I thought was interesting. The CS gauge also depleted if it wasn't used after combat ended in Classic. Combat changes in the remake have significantly changed how spells and skills work. In Classic, you couldn't be interrupted while casting a spell, even if that character got dealt a fatal blow. If that happened, the character would cast a spell before dying. If it was a healing spell, the character would still die from the fatal blow, even if it was casted on himself or herself. The item used to revive characters, the Cup of Wishes, also used to restore all of the characters' MP in addition to their health in Classic, which was pretty great. In the remake, it will only restore their health. On the bright side, leveling up will fully restore characters' HP and MP in the remake, whereas it didn't in Classic. An interesting trade-off. In addition, leveling up worked a bit differently in Classic than it did in Remake. In Classic, stats had to be used at the time of leveling up, and you couldn't put a point into the same stat twice in a row. You had to alternate between points. In the remake, you can sit on points and pump them all into one stat later up to the max. Classic also had 6 stats instead of 5. Dexterity was removed in the remake, probably because of the changes to the combat system. It was also a useless stat that did nothing in Classic, except allow Hawkeye to learn a skill for one of his classes. There were a couple more new progression quality of life changes. Class progression works the same in both versions, though the remake is more lenient by adding in a class reset, which Classic doesn't have. Once a character's class was chosen in Classic, they were locked in for the rest of the game. The seed system was also improved on in the remake by adding levels and being able to plant up to 10 seeds at a time, which made the whole getting items from seeds thing a lot faster. In Classic, only 1 seed could be planted at a time. General quality of life changes were also added to the ring menu. In Classic, the max number of items that could be assigned to the ring menu was 10. Each item also had a quantity cap of 9, so you had to keep transferring items from storage to your inventory to replenish your supplies, which was annoying. The remake has removed the need to use storage, and all items are kept in your inventory, but you're still restricted to 9 uses of an item per encounter. The ring menu's item capacity has also been increased to 12, allowing for more items to be brought into combat. One interesting and disappointing change is the minor mallet can no longer be put on the ring menu in the remake. In Classic, the minor mallet could be used to shrink or restore the size of characters. Other than that, there aren't much more changes to any of the systems. There are a few more miscellaneous differences to mention before I finish. In the remake, there will be a yellow pad that gives you an extra boost to reach certain areas of the map. In Classic, this pad would launch you into the air so that you could see your surrounding area, as there wasn't a map you could use while on foot. Story progression is the other thing that has changed slightly. In Classic, it was much quicker to trigger some story progression, whereas in the remake, they make you talk to more people before it lets you move on to the next step. Not a change I like, but I understand they wanted players to have more information about the setting. This last difference is another thing I was sad about, which is that the NPCs in Dior no longer run away from you when you first enter the village. Now they just stand there and ignore you instead. And that's all I got. Those are some of the differences the remake has from its classic version. Let me know if there are any others that I missed that you found out about.